Hello everyone. Welcome back to Reddit Night, your favorite Reddit reading channel. Today we are back on our /AskReddit with some more scary stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Serious, what is the creepiest/strangest/scariest experience you ever had in your life? I was sleeping at my girlfriend's apartment, and while we were falling asleep my girlfriend turned to my side and said, "Who are you? I don't know you. You have some strange eyes. You aren't the person I know." My heart was racing like crazy and I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. It was terrifying. I was scared she would start screaming for help in the middle of the night or stab me with a knife. My mom always tells us her dead twin sister follows her. Her sister died at a young age. I always called bullshit because, what is she wearing? How did she follow you from the Caribbean where she died? One day at work my mom came to drop off my lunch that I forgot. After she dropped it off and went to say hello to the guy playing music at the back, a customer she walked past stopped, turned and went to his knees and did the Holy Cross. I asked him if he's okay and he stared at my mom and said, "A woman is following that lady over there." My stomach crunched because it was too random. Scariest was just before my dad died, someone broke into our house. I thought my dad was invincible and strong, but that night I learned he wasn't anymore. He hid in the closet of the spare room with us and kept us quiet. I was really young, not quite 7, and I think that was the scariest part for me. In that moment, realizing as a child that my dad's brain cancer was winning. I think my dad only lived another 6 months or so after that. When I was younger, I was riding my bike up and down the street when suddenly a car pulled up beside me. Some guy I didn't recognize leaned over and asked me for directions. I honestly didn't know how to get where he was asking, so I said that. The guy responded with, "What? I couldn't hear you. Can you come closer and repeat that?" Alarm bells were ringing, so I shook my head as I took off on my bike. Luckily he didn't follow me, so who knows, maybe he really was an innocent guy who couldn't hear, but I wasn't going to find out. 2 things. 1. Home Alone, 3 heavy thuds about 5 minutes apart from one another. Then, heard my sister's door, open and close 10 minutes apart from each other. Nothing was there when I checked 45 minutes later. 2. Home Alone, quick heavy footsteps started across my mom's bedroom floor. Nothing was there but sweet Jesus, that was terrifying. When I was about 7 years old my grandpa answered a phone call, then started yelling on the phone. "Then something about you come over here and try it." He said some guy called and said he was going to kill us. I hid in the basement with a .303 British and my grandpa stayed upstairs. A few hours later he called me to come back upstairs. Nothing happened. When I was 18, I was stalked by a man named Pete at my grocery store job. He was a man in his 50s, 60s. I used to work at the counter, selling cigarettes, lotto, doing small checkouts, etc. This man came in, I kid you not, every single shift that I worked. He'd always come to the counter to check out with me. If for any reason I was helping at the registers, he would come to mine. He would gaze at me in a really creepy way. If I was standing across the store from him, I could feel him staring at me. He began to buy me chocolate every time he came to my register. In the beginning, I'd accept, mainly because I just didn't know what to say or how to politely deny. It got to the point where I'd have bags of Reese's behind the counter. On one occasion, he baked me an entire cake and brought it to the grocery store to give to me in front of everyone. I did not eat it. He also used to come in with this guy whose name I don't remember. But his friend lived 2 houses down from my house at the time. I was living at home with my parents at that time. His friend had a very specific work truck that I recognized wherever it was. His friend would sometimes stare at me if we were both standing outside our houses. I went into the store one day on my day off to get some snacks, and Pete was there with the same friend that he always came in with. I was at lane 1 and he was at some other lane in the back. He stared at me with this borderline evil look on his face. Like an utter seriousness. I gave me chills. It got to the point where other employees could sense his weird fixation on me and would go to the extent of sending me to the back office whenever he came in. I'd been telling my parents about Pete and finally, my dad decided to get involved. We lived literally a block away from the store, so my dad told me that as soon as I saw Pete walk in the store, to text him and he would drive down right away. He'd have ample time since Pete would have to shop first. My dad knew what he looked like from the description I gave him since Pete always came in his same work shirt, had a gray ponytail, and the same blue bandana around his head. My dad stood right behind Pete in line and witnessed the absolute creep Pete was towards me. On this day, of all days, he finally went to the extent of asking me out on a date. I declined. Pete pushed back, but I continued to decline. My dad walked right out the store behind him. I literally never saw Pete again after that day, and my dad didn't really tell me what he said to him other than that he really shook him up. Anyway, fast forward. One night I'm working at around 9:30 at night. The store closed at 10 p.m. Pete's friend, that lives 2 houses down from me at the time, walks in. He was a quiet guy and didn't really talk much. He walks around the counter heading to the back of the store to shop presumably. I happened to notice through the window that he parked his work truck right next to my car. Remember, I'm very familiar with what his truck looks like. I thought this was strange considering I'd parked in the back of the parking lot earlier that day because there was never parking in the front during the daytime hours. So I definitely thought it was odd that he chose to park all the way back there during this time when it was dead, when there was a bunch of open spots right in the front. Even then, he parks right next to the only car in the back row. He would have known what my car looked like. It was a specific bright blue color and obviously recognizable from my driveway he saw every day. I ended up telling my supervisor about it right then and there. She agreed she felt that it was weird and that she would have me escorted to my car at the end of my shift. I guess we were being a bit loud, because not even 5 seconds later, the guy comes around the counter and walks right out of the store. Never bought anything, and he'd been in there for about 15 minutes. I instantly had this sick feeling that maybe he was plotting on kidnapping me. From that point on, I never saw either of them, and I eventually just stopped working there and got a better job. Made me insanely conscious of my surroundings from that point on. I went through a period of months with just unexplained terror. Nothing was happening. I didn't see anything. I just couldn't sleep and was terrified all night. Some nights I would get relief even though I don't know why those nights were different. In high school cross country we did a Christmas event where we'd run to the closest elementary school and hang out with the children there, run with them, dance with them, etc. Just whatever they wanted really. I am a nervous wreck and could only talk to one kid at a time, so I hung out with this shy little girl who didn't want to dance or run. So we just talked and drank Gatorade in the back of the room. Ike what we were talking about, but she told me she didn't like her uncle and I was like why, and she said he touched her private parts. I freaked out internally. The teachers called all the children to get into line shortly after that. I told a senior friend of mine what she said and she told the teachers. I felt freaking awful for forever after the girl told me, like reality had just hit me. I had to text my mom about what happened to Vent, and even after that I still didn't feel better. Ike what happened to that kid, and I hope she never sees her uncle again. I couldn't do the event next year. This probably sounds ridiculous when I wasn't even the victim, but it's how I felt. I even felt sick writing this out. I act. This one is my brother's experience, not mine, but I am somewhat partly involved with it. A couple decades ago when I was still in elementary school in my home country, it was just a normal day at school. Came home to my mom's clinic after school with my brother, him eldest, my bro is second eldest, and ate an early dinner there. My mom was a dentist at the time. I usually go home with both of them after my mom closes shop every evening. But this particular day, I asked my mom that I will be going home early, so I left my bro and mom behind the clinic. I got home, and dusk came and darkness have fallen, and I am starting to become curious why they have not arrived home yet. After another hour, I am starting to get worried, wondering if something bad happened. All three of us normally comes home before nightfall, and it was just very odd they have not came home yet. I was scared and worried shitless, having endless thoughts of what could have gone wrong. As a kid in elementary, I couldn't handle the stress and I started crying like crazy. Midnight struck and they were still missing. Finally, at 2 a.m., I heard a knock on the front door and I quickly rushed to open it. I am usually scared opening the door this late, but I couldn't care less. I just wanted my brother and my mother to be the two humans knocking. I opened the door and I saw two pale figures. My mom and my brother were soaking wet, barefoot, and were shaking like crazy. I couldn't even fathom what had happened, and we just stared at each other for a good few minutes until I finally broke the silence with what happened. My mother told me the most fricked up story. They rode a passenger bus around evening time after closing shop, and everything was going well, until near the end of the trip. While in the bus, they heard a couple of loud thuds just underneath the bus, making the whole vehicle shake a bit. They heard metal scratching through concrete and all. The bus had to stop, and in my country, the roads are very dark with no lighting, so they had to resort to flashlights brought by the bus driver and conductor. The driver was the first one out of the bus with his flashlight to check what could have happened and inspect the underside of the bus. He went back inside the bus with a face that looked like he was about to puke and asked everybody to get off the bus and find another transportation. My brother and mother got off and they peeked under the bus, only to realize there was a mangled body of someone riding a motorcycle underneath the bus. It was dark, But with the help of some flashlights, they could see flesh, brains, blood on concrete, all that meshed with twisted metal underneath the bus. My mother and brother told me the bus hit a motorcycle and it went under the bus, crushing the motorcyclist amidst all that mangled flesh and metal. I could not sleep that night, neither could either my mom or bro. And the next morning, just as we were trying to heal from what had happened and all the trauma, I was also traumatized just hearing the story from them, especially in the state they were in. My aunt, my mom's sister, broke the news to us later that following day that her husband never came home last night. The mangled body underneath the bus was my uncle's dead body. I still hurt every time I recall this story, and I am shaking as I type and share this with you all. God bless, and please tell everyone in your family you love them, because you never know what tomorrow will be like. That's it for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.